to Save Bletchley Park. So I'm going to be talking about a campaign that completely took over my life for 3 years and is still part of my life now. Anne mentioned my book, Saving Bletchley Park, which of course you can all download as I'm speaking from Amazon. This campaign absolutely took over my life for 3 years, between 2008 and 2011. So back at the beginning, in 2003, I was a PhD student. I set up an online network for women in technology in the UK called BCS Women, standing for British Computer Society Women's Group. And in 2003, that led me up to Bletchley Park the first time to go to a meeting. And on my way up there, I was thinking, Bletchley Park, what is that? I was thinking code breakers, and in my head, it was kind of maybe about 50 old guys wearing tweed jackets, doing the Times crosswords, smoking pipes, and doing a bit of code breaking on the side. That was kind of the idea I had going up there. And it was amazing when I actually got there. I went to the meeting, and then I went for a walk around the site, and found out that actually it wasn't 50 old guys. It was 10,000 people, and more than half of them women. About 8,000 women had worked there throughout the Second World War. And I went away thinking, I've got to do something to raise the profile of the women that worked at Bletchley Park. And so some key facts here about Bletchley Park. And some of the things that I find incredible is the fact that it shortened the war. The work done there shortened the war by 2 years. And at that time, about 11 million people a year were dying. So potentially the work that was done at Bletchley Park saved 22 million lives. And I was just completely blown away by the fact that no one really knew very much about the women that worked there, and the fact that Bletchley Park was a museum and that it was open. So we ran an oral history project. So BCS Women, the group that I was talking about, we ran an oral history project about the women that worked at Bletchley Park, because we wanted to capture their stories. At that time, if you Googled women in Bletchley Park, you would come up with nothing. So I really wanted to capture their stories, all of these amazing women that worked there, and for posterity, and help everyone to realize what an important place it was. So at the launch of that project in 2008, I gave a talk, and then the then director of Bletchley Park, Simon Greenish, gave a talk, and he basically said that Bletchley Park was teetering on a financial knife edge, and that he was really worried that they'd have to close, they weren't getting enough visitors, and the way they made money was from people going to visit and paying on the gate. So he was scared that Bletchley Park would have to close. And so I went away from that meeting thinking, that's ridiculous, Bletchley Park can't close. And then I was invited up to Bletchley Park for the second time and did a full tour with a veteran, someone who'd worked there, and just found out in each place kind of around the site the major code-breaking achievements. I was just blown away completely. And I just thought, and this place might have to close, I've got to do something about it. So I set up a blog. So it doesn't look as good as blogs these days, but it was fine for the time. So this is in 2008. And I basically talked to everyone that I knew about Bletchley Park to try and raise awareness. And so by this time in 2008, I was head of a computer science department at the University of Westminster, and I was on an email list for all the heads and professors of computing in the country. So I emailed everyone and said, we've got to save Bletchley Park. I sent them a photo of the hut, the one that was on the first slide, saying, you know, like it's basically falling down, we've got to do something about it. There was a petition on the 10 Downing Street website in the UK, which someone else had set up, calling on the government to save Bletchley Park. So I sent a link to that petition and sent this email around to all the heads and professors of computing in the UK. And amazingly, so then you could see the signatures on the list of who'd signed the petition. And so I looked a few hours later, and to my surprise, there were loads and loads of famous professors, people who, you know, when I was a student, I'd read their textbooks, and I really thought, oh my God, I'm not worthy. These people are all signing this list. So that was incredible that all of these people that I really looked up to and respected supported the campaign. So that was great, but then I thought, we've got to do something else. And one of my colleagues at work, John Turner, said, why don't we write a letter to the Times? So I thought that's a great idea. So we put together a letter to the Times, sent it around to all the heads and professors. They all signed it. And then I thought, okay, how can I amplify that message? I'll get onto all the journalists that I know and ask them if they can help. So I emailed all the journalists that I knew, which was about 4 in those days, and said, can you help? I think this is a story. And basically what happened was one of those people was Rory Keflin-Jones from the BBC, and he got me on BBC News and on the Today programme on Radio 4 in the morning saying, I'm ashamed to be British, we've got to save Bletchley Park. So that was incredible, an incredible experience. And there was a massive spike of interest, of course, because that went around the world. But then what happened was a week later, 2 weeks later, what was I going to do? How was I going to carry on raising awareness? I'd been to kind of all the channels that I knew to try and amplify the message, which was basically the traditional media. I'd been to the newspapers and been on TV. What else was I going to do? And so it wasn't until a few months after that, towards the end of 2008, when I started using Twitter. And I was actually at a conference like this, and the person on stage said, who here's on Twitter? So I put my hand up and said, yeah, I'm on Twitter. And I said to the guy next to me, it's rubbish, isn't it? Because like a lot of people, when you first start using Twitter, and especially then when there wasn't such a good interface, it was just very hard to work out what to do and what you could do with it. So I'd been on there for a year, I think, but I just looked at it and thought, just what is this? I don't know what it is. So I said to the guy sitting next to me, it's rubbish, isn't it? And he said, no, it's amazing if you've got it on your phone. So I hadn't, so I downloaded it onto my phone. And I realized very quickly that as the day wore on at the conference, the people that I was speaking to sitting next to me in the conference were then in different sessions in the afternoon, and I was reading their tweets in the afternoon, and I just thought, oh, I can not only see what's going on in front of me here in this session, but with parallel sessions, I now got 2 people in the other sessions tweeting about what's going on there, so I can kind of see the whole conference just through my phone because I was reading their tweets and seeing what was happening. So that kind of, sparked all these ideas in my mind, and I just thought, okay, well, this is going to be great for trying to raise awareness of Bletchley Park. So I put a link to my blog on my Twitter profile, and over Christmas that year, so the end of 2008, started tweeting a bit about Bletchley Park. And then quite quickly, some people got in touch with me, who are some of these guys here, saying, we want to help you, we want to help save Bletchley Park. So I met up with them. The 2 guys are Documentally and Sizemore on Twitter. Amazing guys who knew so much more about social media than I did. They got in touch, and I took them up to Bletchley Park to go and meet the people at Bletchley Park to help Bletchley Park understand what the possibilities of social media were. And I also wanted them to go and see what an amazing place it was, and for them to share that on social media. So that worked really well. We also went to a talk by Captain Jerry Roberts, who unfortunately is no longer with us. One of the codebreakers that got in touch with me after I was on the BBC, who became a family friend. He was a really wonderful guy, and unfortunately, one of the worst things for me of being involved with Bletchley Park is most of the people that I've got to know that were veterans or unfortunately have now died. So I got some social media people up to Bletchley Park, tweeting about Bletchley Park. I got Bletchley Park to understand how important Twitter was. So that all that excitement happened. And then, my whole campaigning thing is I've just been trying to look for new ideas on different ways to do things. So one night I was sitting after a couple of bottles of beer at my computer at home, and I saw Stephen Fry had tweeted this. And so he was stuck in a lift, and they'd done a selfie in the lift. And he was saying, we can't get out of the lift. Can anyone on Twitter help us? Because we've tried phoning the number and banging and shouting, but nothing's happened. So I thought, Stephen Fry, he must be interested in Bletchley Park. So luckily he was following me, so I sent him several direct messages, and the next morning I was sitting at my computer and I saw this. Oh, I didn't see the photo, that came a lot later. But I saw this tweet from Stephen Fry saying, pointing to my blog, basically. And so my blog, I'd been getting about 50 hits a day, but when Stephen Fry tweeted this, I got 8,000 hits that day. And that's when he only had about 110,000 followers, I think. But so that was incredible. So I had loads and loads of people tweeting me, and actually I was the most retweeted person in the world on Twitter that day, which was just incredible. And that won't happen again, will it? Look at how it's changed since then. So We did various things. I can't go into much detail now, but it's all in my book, of what we did in the campaign. But basically, social media made a massive, massive difference to what we were able to do. And Bletchley Park ended up winning awards because of what we were doing on Twitter. It was just incredible. And just kind of to give me, so this is my family, so kind of give me pause about what it was like for my family when I was campaigning, and kind of in the whole mindset of I must, sort this out. This is a photo of me and my boyfriend and my kids on my son's, I think it's 23rd birthday, they're twins. And looking back at this picture just makes me think, what must they have thought of me as a mother? But so I said to the boys, I've organised a surprise trip for you for your birthday. You'll never guess where we're going. And they were like, where? All excited. And I was like, Bletchley Park. And they were like, oh, thanks, Mum. But actually, that was the first time they'd been there, and they did say they enjoyed it. So, but I just, it's just I was so caught up in everything. I thought everyone has got to go there, and everyone loves it. It was so funny. My poor children. So over the years, so it took 3 years really from 2008 to 2011 to get to the stage where Bletchley Park was actually going to be okay. But kind of through the years, I was always casting around for different things to do with social media because I just found that it could have an impact so quickly. And some of the things that we did, which are very straightforward, if you're running a campaign, if you put particular keywords into the search box, you can find everyone that's talking on Twitter about stuff that you're interested in. So, for example, I could just put Bletchley Park into the search box on Twitter and find everyone speaking about Bletchley Park. And then I could have a conversation with them because you can connect them directly on Twitter. So Twitter is an amazing tool for campaigning. I found one guy, the Universities and Science Committee chair, who'd just come onto Twitter. So that's a great time to find people on Twitter is when they've just come onto Twitter, particularly high-profile people. I guess this is less relevant these days because practically everyone's on there now, but back in the day, it was great when you just see someone with their first tweets, and if you got in and started chatting to them, they would chat to you, whoever you were, because they were just excited that someone was talking to them on Twitter. So that kind of got me in to talk to a government minister who I pitched and said, you've got to help save Bletchley Park. And he said, I know what I'll do. I'll set up an EDM. So I was like, that's great. What's an EDM? And it's an early day motion. And he told me that it was to raise awareness within Parliament of the campaign and of Bletchley Park and them needing money. So he set up an EDM. And what happened was not that long after that, what we actually asked for was for operational funding for Bletchley Park. In the last week before the new budget year, someone from government phoned up Bletchley Park and said, can you spend £250,000 this week on Bletchley Park? And so they said, yes, of course. So that was cool. Some other amazing things that have happened through campaigning. So I wanted to get kind of like Bletchley Park known in the international museum community. So I wrote a paper with someone at Bletchley Park and a professor from South Bank Uni called Can Twitter Save Bletchley Park? So we sent the paper in, it got accepted, and then I realized that actually the conference was in Denver, we were in the UK, we didn't have money to pay for us to get there. So basically through Twitter again, asked friends, what can I do? And several people said, why don't you set up a Just Giving to fund your trip? And amazingly, in just 2 weeks, just before Christmas, we got like £2,500 so that we could go to Denver and present the paper, which was just incredible. And that was before many people were really talking about crowdfunding and stuff. So here's all the people that donated to that. My favourite one, the biggest donor, is Mr. Grasshead at the top in the middle. I don't know where he gets his money from, but he's a very generous person. And so this is one of my favourite photos of me. It's not the most flattering. But when we went over to the conference, the Icelandic volcano that erupted, so that happened while we were in Denver, just after presenting the paper. And again, through Twitter, someone got in touch saying they'd like to meet up with us because they were from Denver. So I met up with this amazing woman, Lisa Crispin, for breakfast. And she said, what do you want to do today? We can do anything you want. So we were like, we want to get out of Denver because we've been here, for the conference for 3 days. She said, well, I'm going to my friend's ranch today. Do you want to come along? And we were like, yes, please. Like, having never been to a ranch before. In my head, ranches are like cowboy films that I watched when I was a kid. So we went along, and this is me at the ranch learning how to llama whisper. So I'm blowing up the llama's nostrils to get it to trust me. And I just thought, how random is this? But I just love that photo. So in 2011, 3 years after starting the campaign, Simon Greenish said that Bletchley Park was saved. So for me, I was sitting in a meeting, and he said that. And when you see in cartoons where people have, cartoon characters have all those kind of like question marks and hashes and whatever kind of going around their head because they've been hit on the head or something. I just felt like that. I don't remember what happened in the rest of that meeting because it was just like, so after 3 years, it worked. And I thought it would take 6 months. So 3 years was long, but after 3 years of campaigning, it just seemed like it was never going to end. So that was just an incredible moment for me. Some of Turing's papers came up for auction at Christie's a couple of years after that, and I was delighted to be able to connect with people from Google and bring them in to help Bletchley Park to buy the Turing papers. Again, that's a great story, but I can see I'm running out of time, so that's in the book too. Again, Captain Jerry Roberts, who was one of the code breakers at Bletchley Park, a really incredible guy. So when finally, after all the campaigning, the Queen went up to Bletchley Park and really kind of recognised that it was a really important place. And Jerry got to meet the Queen and talk to her all about what he'd done at Bletchley Park. That was a really wonderful moment for me to see the veterans get the proper recognition that they should get. So here we have Hut 6 at Bletchley Park. So that's how it was in 2008 when I took the photo. And then 8 years later, that's how it is now. So they've received millions of pounds in lottery funding. They still need more funding. But the huts have been saved and lots of renovations have been carried out. And it's a great place to visit. So I highly recommend that you go there. Actually, how many people have been to Bletchley Park? Good. You're now my favourite people in the audience. And how many people are now going to go to Bletchley Park? I wish I had my phone to take a photo of that. Cool, it's an amazing place. So now I've written a book called Saving Bletchley Park, which is the whole story of what we did on the social media campaign. And it's also got lots of facts from what happened there in terms of like the Enigma machine, the women that work there. So Steve Colgan is one of the QI elves. So he's written the book with me. So I've written the whole story of what we did on the campaign. And it's kind of a primer in how to use social media to make a successful campaign happen. And Steve's written all the more factual bits about Enigma machine, the women that work there, about Turing, how the Enigma machines work, all sorts of things in there. So I highly recommend that you buy it. If anyone's got a copy, I'd love to sign it for you. If anyone wants to talk to me, I'd love to talk to you about social media campaigning in general and about Bletchley Park. And thanks very much for listening. Thank you.
Want to be in the audience next time? Click here for tickets to Inspirefest 2017.